Reason for Everything by dogpawsswapgod. That's me. Chapter 2, Caitlyn Kiramman, 1 through 3. 1. The ornate wrought iron gates of the Kiramman estate part noiselessly on well-oiled hinges before the commander, who marches through them toward the threshold of the house, her face half hidden behind the high, stiff collar she wears, her badge of office. Behind her trail a small detachment of enforcers, the remnants of her strike team. Two masked Noxian retainers bring up the rear. Each holds in their non-spear hand the finely carved handle on either side of a large, heavy chest embossed with the crest of the Medarda family. Caitlyn's father does not greet her. Instead, the head housekeeper, an apple-cheeked man who's held the job since Caitlyn was a baby, stands by the open door and warmly welcomes the woman who had once been the girl whose nose he'd often cleaned with the embroidered silk handkerchief that is his badge of office. "Miss Kate," he begins, a warm smile spreading across his round face. "Commander," comes a sweet voice bearing a stern edge. Following the sound of the unfamiliar voice, the housekeeper looks past Kate to a diminutive enforcer standing just behind her right shoulder. The woman is small but looks sprightly. A short finger of golden red hair reaches from beneath her heavy helmet, curling to a sharp point at the outer corner of her left eye. She wears the standard-issue battle dress uniform of the enforcers, but the way she carries herself strikes him as more cat than guard dog, not at all the typical bearing of an enforcer of Piltover. "My apologies, Commander. Of course." The head housekeeper turns his eyes to Caitlyn again, bringing a fist to his chest in the Noxian way. "We had heard the news of the Council's dissolution, and your ascension to this emergency office. Please know that I speak for the staff when I say we are all relieved that it is you who will be directing our city's course through this crisis." The housekeeper speaks truly. Just the same, he can't help but steal another look at the strawberry-haired girl standing with a hand casually resting on her service weapon, which he notices is unclipped in its holster. She meets his eyes, and he finds her gaze to be unreadable. Caitlyn dips her chin slightly by way of response and soon continues past him and into the house. A long arm emerges from under the flowing coat that is draped heavily over her shoulders. The light catches on the brass key she holds in her hand, not something to be bandied about outside the company of trusted friends. "This way to the study." She gestures down a long hallway that disappears beneath the grand double staircase just inside the foyer. Her arm withdraws once more, the Kiramman key disappearing into the long coat. The young commander hurries down the hall, followed closely by her small entourage. The housekeeper watches them go, his eyes still lingering on the smallest of the group, who follows behind Miss Kate as though an invisible force binds them, keeping the cherubic little soldier within a very reasonable arm's reach of her commander at every step. Not a cat at all, the housekeeper thinks darkly. More like a fox. In that moment, he realizes that the young pink-haired woman from the Undercity hadn't been with Miss Kate's team just now. What could have happened to her? The girl, she's called Vi, he remembers, had been a constant presence to Miss Kate in the hard, long days following her mother's assassination. She had lingered on the estate grounds, and he had observed how Miss Kate would find her many times throughout the busy flurry of those first difficult days. She had seemed to return from each of these brief respites with renewed strength. The Bottomsider had had crude manners while a guest of the house, but was undeniably devoted to Caitlyn's well-being, and Caitlyn to hers, or so the housekeeper had thought. Her absence now seems an ill omen to the old man. He hears the familiar sound of the large oak door of Cassandra's, now Caitlyn's, study, swinging open, then closing heavily. The wooden groan echoes in its way through the wide marble halls of the Kiramman house. The housekeeper stands a moment longer, looking after them, that echo fading around him, hollowing with each reverberation. A cold knot briefly squeezes inside his stomach, and a shiver courses through him as the echo finds its end. Miss Kate and the widower Kiramman need him now more than ever. He reflexively reaches a finger into his breast pocket, feeling the thickly embroidered letters on the delicate silk, and dismissing the unwelcome feeling the sweet-voiced woman has left him with, returns to his work. 2. There exists a measure of time, occupying an interval too brief for a mortal being to perceive, but no less real for this failure of perception. It can be described as the instant between the trigger squeeze that fires a rifle and the burst of feathers as the flock takes flight, having finally heard the sound of the shot that's already ripped through the downy layers and into the bleeding breast of one among them. While too fast to experience consciously, one can scribble an equation that makes sense of it, as Caitlyn had learned to do in her school days. The speed of sound is plottable, but the reality of it is a matter of life and death, depending on the application. Another blast, the smell of gunpowder and the sound of birds on the wing. a whispering like waves as hounds leap through tall grasses after their quarry, tracking with keen noses to where they lay in widening pools of maroon. The dogs are trained to lift the birds gently in their jaws and return them to the hunter with no further damage to their prized husks. They learn by lash and leash to deny their base drives, so that when they find a fat bird or goose curled in its final nest in the tangle of grasses, they do not stop to lap up any of the warm blood burbling as from a spring onto the green blades. While carrying the bleeding corpses, sometimes a drop or more will land upon their highly evolved tongues, but they do not taste it. One such hound is returning to Ambessa now, the still warm mallard in its teeth flopping gracelessly as the dog bounds over the top of the tall grass and toward the place where the general stands at Kate's right hand, a satisfied look in her eye. Vision, she's saying, not for the first time. The top of the triangle. Kate has heard this lesson before and will again. She is studying it as she had once studied the mysterious equation that revealed the simple secret between the trigger squeeze and the bird fall. It's just a matter of time. This Noxian battlefield theory of Ambessa's, however, does not come as naturally to Kate as the maths had. The warlord's lesson on the three principles of strength is foreign wisdom to Kate, and she's endeavoring to be an apt pupil. Coming out here had been Kate's idea, though now she's regretting it. She thought it would do her good, the fresh air and the open sky, but as soon as they'd arrived at the campgrounds, it had all felt wrong to Kate. She's looking out over the rolling fields beyond the city and picking at the edge of a memory. Another shot rings out and another dog takes off to meet a shape where it's falling from the sky. Ambessa continues her lecture. She's running two brown fingers along the barrel of the Piltover-made rifle in her hands, a gift from her young protege. Might! The general seems to savor the word like a mouthful of one of the blood-red wines she favors. These firearms are elegantly made, but they remove a necessary element from the battlefield. She cocks the rifle once with proficiency, brings it to her shoulder, aims with one eye, and fires. Another bird becomes a falling shape, and another dog springs to fetch and return it to master. Caitlyn holds her rifle thoughtfully. It's comfortable in her hands, familiar. Why had she wanted to come here? She can feel Ambessa's eyes watching her. Caitlyn shoulders her rifle and fires, bringing an end to a particularly rotund duck one of Ambessa's dogs is already chasing down. Many other nations have long divested in such weapons in both their peacekeeping and their defense organizations. Like Noxus, such places value the might necessitated by a fighting force that must fight with its full self, rather than hiding in duck blinds taking pot shots. Caitlyn bristles at this, unable to hide how it bothers her. She can almost hear the husky voice of her old mentor. Knowing how to handle this weapon means being able to protect people, to be of service to the city. Ambessa narrows her eyes at the young commander, who doesn't seem to be fully listening. Guile. Ambessa's voice sounds suddenly distant. Kate tears her eyes from the horizon and turns, expecting to see her mentor standing to her right, towering over her. Instead, an emptiness looks back at her. Kate lowers her rifle further, looking around. The effect of her mentor's sudden disappearance is unsettling. A thick arm, hard with muscle, shoots out of nowhere and wraps itself around Caitlyn's neck, wrestling her into a painful chokehold. A voice hisses into her ear. Shadows in your heart. Cunning. Every trick at your disposal. Caitlyn taps Ambessa's elbow in the way she has been taught, and the older woman releases her. She stands smoothing her collar and holding her weapon loosely in one hand, annoyed with the course today's lesson has taken. You are the leader of your city. You exercise absolute authority in a time of crisis. Do not underestimate the enemy, nor think so lowly of them as to dismiss their capacity to employ any means, however dishonorable, by which they might harm you and those closest to you. Ambessa leans her gun against the table that holds their lunch, and pours herself a goblet of wine. Nearby, her primary retainer, Rictus, is going through the motions of some ritual he keeps to each day, involving a unique relic. Caitlyn has never seen its like. She sees how the runes carved into the ingots glow with a faint green light each time he completes the steps and wraps the relic once again around his glaive. She doesn't understand its purpose, but she recognizes its importance to Ambessa's security. Another dog returns, this one dropping a dead thing at Caitlyn's feet. The duck whose ribs she had so easily shattered with her practiced eye. She looks down at the dead bird. In her killing eye, a brilliant blue light flares painfully. Behind it, she sees a small girl shielding someone, a young woman with shock blue hair twisted into impossibly long braids. Another voice is echoing in her ears now, pleading, "Everyone in my life has changed. Promise me you won't change." The duck lay at Kate's feet. She doesn't move to retrieve it. Ambessa notices this too, and doesn't care for the mood she finds her student in today. "Why did you choose this place?" she asks bluntly. Caitlyn stirs, the question relevant and interesting to her. "I used to come here as a girl. I won a trophy here once when I was still very young. Caitlin pauses. She's not sure whether to tell Ambessa the truth about how she had won that day. She decides she will. She wants to gauge how the general would respond to it. Your mentor lost to you on purpose? Did she believe she was doing you some kind of favor? Ambessa sounds disgusted with this account of Grayson that Kate is sharing. She thought I deserved it, Kate responds, hearing how it would sound in the ears of the Noxian warrior. What you deserve is exactly what you end up with, the general scoffs, bemused. She drinks deeply from her oversized goblet, then swirls the wine inside the wide bowl of it, staining the glass red. A trophy is a trinket. Anyone who competes for it deserves to have it as a reminder of the hollowness of her pursuit. Ambessa bores two fiery eyes into Kate. Is your heart so empty of ambition, child? Now this somehow does sound like Grayson, if in a distinctly Noxian way. Begs the question, young Kiramman. What are you shooting for? Caitlin grips her rifle again tightly in both hands. She meets Ambessa's eyes, keeping her own steely and calm, something else she's practiced under the general's tutelage, looking the part of the commander, becoming a pillar, almost literally, unflappable, cold, allowing your plans to unfold around you, the work of the hundreds and thousands of hands devoted to your cause. Caitlin bends and scoops the soft body of her kill into one narrow palm. She considers it a moment, then speaks. My ambition is to avenge my mother and all of Piltover from the ravages and filth of the Undercity that would see us all destroyed. The words come out as she had practiced them dozens of times in her head and heart. She endeavors to make them true as she speaks them. Her voice will reify her purpose. Ambessa looks into her, considering these words. Beg your pardon, Commander. A sweet voice seems to float in on a breeze, breaking the tension. Ambessa, apparently satisfied with Kate's answer, turns back to her wine, showing no interest in the petite enforcer who's suddenly standing at parade rest between them, a number of thick folders held under one arm. Reports are in from new checkpoints established throughout the Alcove district. The occupation has successfully secured nearly a dozen additional neighborhoods. I have the interrogation reports and updated district data for your review when you're ready. She looks admiringly into the face of the commander, who only returns the junior officer's gaze after throwing the dead bird she's holding onto a small pile of other corpses nearby to be cleaned later. Thank you, Officer Nolan. You may bring those directly to my study at the estate. I will meet you there after the general and I finish here. Kate pauses, considering her next words carefully in front of Ambessa. She continues, almost warmly. I'd appreciate your insights. Be prepared to work late. Maddie doesn't blush while Kate's ears go hot and red. She suddenly misses the privacy of her high, stiff collar. The enforcer presses a fist to her chest and departs with her orders. Ambessa watches her go. At the general's heel, a well-trained dog awaits the sound that signals the time has come to perform its intended function. It sits back on coiled muscles, ready to explode following the instant between the squeezing of a trigger and the burst of feathers as the flock takes flight, its target already dead before the sound could ever reach either animal's ears. 3. Boots on stone are becoming a familiar sound throughout Piltover, as martial law stretches into its third month. It thumps in Kate's ears now as the commander walks a familiar route toward a memory, and no doubt another dead end. Maddie follows close behind. Kate can feel her there, trailing in step at her constant orbit just within arm's reach. Caitlin feels a familiar jab of ambivalence toward the woman, then molds it with practiced alacrity into something more resembling affection. She's getting better at this alchemy. It's necessary to maintain the relationship between them, which had pushed past the boundaries of professional weeks and weeks ago, hurtling headlong into... Kate isn't sure, and a large portion of her doesn't care. Thus the alchemy, the twisting and realigning of her emotional states to suit her needs. Might, bending the environment to your will. Caitlin thinks she might be misapplying this principle and bending her own emotions and reactions to her will, rather than her environment, but she carries on with the habit anyway, and it gets easier each time. Maddie will place a warm hand on Kate's elbow, and Kate wills herself not to recoil. This seems enough. Maddie appears at a critical moment during an investigation with just the information Caitlin needs, and Caitlin remembers to thank the young enforcer for her service to the city. Maddie accepts this praise and redoubles her efforts. Maddie tenderly kisses Kate's lips, sets aside the glass Kate holds in her hands, massages Kate's shoulders, and trails her always smiling mouth down Kate's belly, to lay passionate kisses into the aching well of Kate's desire. And Kate wills herself to remember that this is Maddie, and it's Maddie's name, if any, that should be on her lips, moaned with pained ecstasy at the moment of climax. But still, Kate's thin bottom lip comes to her parted front teeth every time to form the letter V. So she just says nothing, and Maddie accepts that too. So far, our investigation into the disappearance of Counselor Tallis and Victor have yielded few answers. Someone clever gave me an idea. Then maybe to figure out where they'd gone to, we could take a look at where they started. The commander addresses her shadow in a professional tone, but pads her debrief with an attempt at flirtation. Of course Maddie catches on. Kate can hear the smile in her voice as she sings from behind her right ear. You honor me, Commander. Kate hears the thud of a fist coming to rest on an armored breastplate, also a regular part of the soundscape of Piltover these days. I'm relieved you find wisdom in my insights, she continues, but I still worry that you're not getting enough sleep. Kate feels a whisper of a touch against her elbow as Maddie quickly extends her hand. Every system has its limits, isn't that what Counselor Tallis would say? Jace, Kate begins, then corrects herself. Counselor Tallis was quoting his partner Victor when he said that, but I take your point, officer. Here. The two women turn a corner, their boots still marking the same time, and stop before a building that seems to be abandoned. Maddie looks up and sees why. On the higher floors, a hole 2 stories high and half as wide as the building has been blown into the facade. Maddie looks with a trained eye at the damage. Buildings don't heal or scar, but their wounds can be red, dated. She guesses that the explosion that had ended this building's usefulness to the Academy District had happened somewhere within the last 5 to 10 years. It looks like the explosion came from inside, she says, looking up at and into the blasted-out apartments within. Kate turns to look at the junior officer, then up at the building. Indeed it did. I remember. I was there. She steps forward, making her way to the entrance. She pulls a ring bearing a single heavy key from within her voluminous coat. My family owns this building. It's been derelict since that day. The key catches on its tumblers and the lock throws. The door swings open and the 2 investigators step inside. Advancing up the stairs, Maddie in tow, Caitlyn remembers the last time she was here. She was the one trailing behind that day, eagerly following Jace like a puppy, carrying the heavy box of gizmos he'd purchased in the Undercity. She had peppered him with questions about what it had been like down there, amazed that he seemed to have returned in one piece, and with so much treasure in hand. Did you remember to haggle at least? She had asked, and Jace had missed a step by way of an answer. Here, Caitlyn says again, and they're in a familiar hallway, dark but for the glow of the gaslights on the streets below which spill in through the blown-out walls. Kate remembers Jace pushing the key into the door of his laboratory, but the door wouldn't open. On the other side, she thought she had heard a girl's voice whisper sharply to someone. Then a brilliant blue light had filled the hall, followed close by a deafening blast. Kate, who had been standing near the stairwell, slowed by the heavy box of curios she was struggling to carry, had been knocked back by the explosion, spilling the box and its contents down the stairs. Counselor Tallis began his career under the patronage of my family. His first laboratory was here. It's where he met Victor, though that was after. Kate gestures at the scene. After this. The 2 of them step into the ruined apartment, its 2 rooms' outer walls blasted clean off, its remaining walls cracked and crumbling in a strange pattern resembling a web. Maddie moves deeper into the room, switching on her torch and beginning her investigation. Kate regards her, wondering what the girl thinks she's looking for. Maddie's light shines over the rubble, across the countertops dusty with neglect and onto the chalkboard. It's still covered with the formulas and runes of Jace's earliest efforts to crack Hextech, something he ultimately wasn't able to do without Victor. Kate wonders if the 2 of them are together, wherever they are. She doesn't like the idea of something having driven them apart. She winces and moves on from the thought. Maddie studies the markings on the chalkboard. Her light comes to rest on a rune, written larger than the others, gone over many times to make it bold. It stands out. Do you recognize this one? She asks her commander. Acceleration, Kate responds without thinking, surprising herself. How does she know that? The answer comes to her. That one was special to him. He wore a bracelet with a stone bearing that rune. Kate looks again at the chalk recreation of the acceleration rune that Maddie has her light trained on. Someone gave it to him when he was little. She continues the story as she remembers it. The storm, the appearance of the mage, the power that had been summoned with complicated sweeps of a mighty staff. She recounts it now to Maddie, a renewed awe animating her voice. It's an unbelievable tale, but it had happened, and it had set into motion a series of events that Kate now finds herself swept into the center of. The rune, the power stored in the gemstone, the complex motions to activate the rune's purpose, all mysteries which Counselor Tallis devoted himself to unlocking. The commander considers this. He succeeded in doing so. It's what would become Hextech, but he needed Victor to do it. He was never going to get anywhere until he met Victor and they started working together. Maddie lowers her light from the chalkboard and clicks it off. She approaches Kate, who stands in a pool of lamplight stretching in from the street. She's significantly smaller than the commander, who stands just over 6 feet tall. Kate allows Maddie to move into her and press herself against her. Maddie wraps her arms around the narrow waist hidden under the ornate coat and looks up, her chin resting on Kate's breastbone, her large, friendly eyes inviting Kate closer. The commander wills herself to bring her lips down and kiss Maddie's expectant mouth. She wills her hands up to Maddie's face, gripping it briefly before sliding them down to rest on Maddie's wide hips. Kate performs the necessary alchemy to prolong the kiss, to sink into it, to almost enjoy it. Maddie accepts this. Kate ends their kiss and steps away from the junior officer in one swift motion, focusing again on the rune. Maddie turns, taking her place behind the commander's right shoulder, just within arm's reach. That they needed one another to accomplish Hextech. That's a beautiful idea, Maddie offers. Something so powerful and wonderful could only come from a partnership of the heart. The young enforcer certainly has a way with words. She sometimes reminds Kate of Ambessa in a strange way because of this, her uncanny ability to say just what Kate needs to hear in the moment to set her back on the path. This, however, is a rare miss on Maddie's part. Her words cut into Caitlyn's heart, surprising her with the damage they do. It's her blood in your veins. Then why are you the one acting like her? Kate lingers in the pain of the memory, hovering at the edge of the moment when she had committed her second unspeakable act. In her mind's eye, she watches herself thrust the heavy butt of her rifle into Vi's ribs, trying, wanting to hurt her. Kate watches as she once again turns her back on Vi, whose pain cries call out to her. She watches herself climb the ladder out of the lower city, leaving Vi there, crying, alone. Do you think they're together? Maddie's voice brings Kate back. She looks again at the rune, considering its meaning, its power. She can't answer Maddie's question, so she ignores it. I don't think Ambessa will be impressed with our update regarding the disappearances of Counselor Tallis and his partner Victor. Kate tries to be playful, but her delivery falls a little flat. She has to try so hard with Maddie. It wearies her. Maddie picks up on her attempt nonetheless and moves toward Kate, encircling the waist beneath the heavy coat once again. Ambessa can take a long walk off a short pier, Maddie quips, rising onto her tiptoes to plant a flirty kiss at the corner of Kate's mouth. If you can't find any additional leads as to the whereabouts of those two mad scientists, it's because they don't want to be found. Caitlyn can't argue with that. She knows she's an effective investigator, and she has more resources at hand than she could use. Even so, after nearly 3 full months of trying, no trace has been found of either Jace or Victor. The Hex Gates stand without a steward. No one in the city has the qualifications or expertise to secure their power. No one in the city even comes close. A knife of pure irony cuts into Kate's thoughts as she remembers bitterly that at least one person in the city does know enough about Hextech to be of use to them now. She's currently the focus of a months-long manhunt that so far, much like this investigation, has yielded no results. Both failures are overt chinks in the commander's armor, vulnerabilities that her closest advisor, the Noxian general, remind her of daily. This trip has led to another dead end, as expected, but it's given Caitlyn the chance to leave the estate for a few hours, alone but for her constant companion. She'll tell the general what Maddie told her. Jace and Victor don't want to be found. There's nothing more they can do about it. They'll be better served redirecting the resources they're using trying to find them toward their hunt for Jinx, now more valuable than ever. Kate lets Maddie hold her a little longer, then moves away from her again, turning her back to the rune and exiting the blasted-out apartment. Maddie falls in sync with her immediately, and the two women are soon out on the street again. Caitlyn stops and twists the key once more in the lock. It catches with a loud clang of metal on metal. She sets off without another word back toward the Kiramman estate. In the morning, the commander will try to convince Ambessa to seek other means of securing Hextech. Her thoughts linger on Jace and his partner, Victor, Maddie's question nagging at her. Do you think they're together? The commander and the junior officer march with synchronized footfalls out of the Academy district and into the deserted streets of Piltover under curfew. Artwork by Honeybee-arts.